Hi, I'm Dr. Fish. I'd like to give you a brief introduction to Confucianism, which is a philosophy that has been extraordinarily influential on both government and culture, especially in China, but also in other parts of East Asia and even in other parts of the world. The goal of this short video is just to give you a quick overview of some of the key ideas of Confucianism, not to go fully into the depths of what Confucianism is and its influence on world history. To start as a broad idea of the ideas, what actually is Confucianism? It's very broadly misunderstood. Confucianism actually comes from the ideas of one man, and I apologize for my pronunciation of Chinese. If any of my students who speak Chinese want to correct it, please do so in class. But there was a man named Confucius, and that's become pronounced in English as Confucius, who lived in 551 to 479 BCE in what was then China. The period he lived was during the Zhou dynasty, during something called the period of the Warring States, which was an era of tremendous disorder in China. With that in mind, the goal he had in putting forth his philosophy was to think of what is the way that society could be organized, including through government, to create order and harmony, as opposed to trying to create equality or something of those sorts. Confucius himself did not write anything down, or at least none of his writing themselves have been preserved. Instead, what Confucius did is he had a series of students or disciples whom he said things to, and his students wrote things down. And these things have been put down in something that has become, through time, to be known as the Analects of Confucius, which have been translated into many languages, including English. So I would encourage you to actually pick up a copy and read through them for yourselves. And that leads to why when often we talk about Confucianism, it's often done in phrases where you see something like the master says or Confucius says. Usually it's in the idea of the master as opposed to Confucius. Within that, there are many key ideas within Confucianism, and I'm going to highlight three of them that lead to the idea of order. The first, most essential for understanding both the entire approach, is something called the rectification of names. The rectification of names is fundamental to all of Confucianism. And what it actually is this. It says, the master says, let the ruler be a ruler, the minister a minister, the father a father, the son a son. Excellent, said the Duke. Truly, if the ruler is not a ruler, the subject is not a subject. The father is not a father, and the son is not a son. Though I have grain, will I get to eat it? And what that means in simple terms is that if people know their place in society, if the ruler acts as a ruler should and the subject acts as a subject should, if the father acts as a father should and the son acts as a son should, then the world will be peaceful and will operate well. And what that whole thing is, though I have grain, will I get to eat it, has to do with the idea that when this happens, then people will basically be able to eat, that society will function. And that actually is an idea that is infused throughout Confucianism, is that people need to know their proper place and role in society and behave in the proper way within the context of all of those relationships. Which leads to a second major point of Confucianism, which is that Confucianism is based on relationships that people have in society, ethical relationships people have in society, and fulfilling those relationships. Of course, relationships are complicated and there are many, but Confucius laid down all societal relationships into five basic, what I call reciprocal hierarchical relationships. And many people, when they think of Confucianism, they think about the hierarchical, but don't think through the reciprocal, which is essential to Confucianism. What reciprocal hierarchical means is hierarchical, it's all relationships except for sometimes one, where one person is above the other. But what reciprocal means is one person being above the other means that it's two ways. The person above has power over the person below, and that power is to be followed. But they're supposed to exercise that power in the interests of the one below them. And in return for the person above serving the interests of those below, the people below are supposed to serve the interest of those above them. In other words, it's reciprocal, it goes both ways. And the five basic relationships are, always with the more authoritative coming first, ruler to subject, father to son, husband to wife, older brother to younger brother, and friend to friend are sometimes referred to as older friend to younger friend. And I think, as you can see, for most people in many of these relationships, they have to look at where they are to figure out which role they fulfill. So for example, with father and son, sometimes the same person can be both a father and a son, depending on who is in the room with them. And they have to adjust their behaviors based on what their role is within a specific relationship. Overlying all of these is something that's become famous through time, known as the Golden Rule, which actually is something that first comes out of Confucianism, at least from what I know. And the Golden Rule, as put forth by Confucius, is do not impose on others what you do not wish for yourself, which again would also apply to those 5 hierarchical reciprocal relationships. Um, There are many other ideas within Confucianism, but the basic idea is it's a series of ethical precepts. And the idea is that if people follow these ethical precepts, then society will function well. In another video, I will explain how these ideas became so influential in later times in Chinese history. But this is just supposed to give you a basic introduction to the ideas of Confucianism. There's a lot more out there in the English language if you'd like to read about it. And of course, the Analects are translated widely into English if you want to read them for yourself. Thank you very much.